Hello and welcome back to the Marvin Smith Podcast, Spirit-Led Conversations. I'm your co-host, David Sosa, with our host, Marvin Smith, and today's topic is all about ministry. Welcome, Pastor.
Thank you. Good to be here.
And it's all about ministry, and we're going to kind of go pretty quickly here. I'm going to kind of name some of the ministries we have going on in our church, and I know some of the ministries that we have are very, they're part of your heart.
Yes.
And so we have the bus ministry. I know you love the bus ministry. We have a teen program. We have a school and a college that God has used tremendously. And one of the other ministries that we have is the Hebron Counseling Ministry, and also we've had a home for troubled teens. And so with all of these ministries, where do you think that it was the starting point? If I was a pastor going into the ministry, where is my starting point with maybe not specifically these same ministries, but something along those lines?
Yeah, I think the important thing is not to look at somebody else's ministry and try to duplicate that. Not that we don't learn from one another, because I have great mentors out there that built great churches, churches that way outdo anything I've ever done, and yet I learned from them. But I didn't take what they did home and say, I'm going to be just like that church. I saw that over and over through the years. Men go to some place and they go, I'm going to go home and be just like this church. And I just think God made us all different. So how did I find the why I am on the earth? Because if I find the why I'm here, that will begin to create a culture in my ministry that's different than somebody else's. Although we're going to keep soul winning, we're going to keep the Bible is the inspired and inerrant Word of God, and all of that's going to stay. We're going to have those similarities. But Alice and I got married early. She was 18, I was 19. We got married in 1976, and 2 weeks after we got married, my heart was on fire for the Lord. I wanted to help anybody and everybody I could. It's something God did in me. And so I found this guy sleeping in his car. Alice and I were working at a truck stop at that time, and I invited that guy to come live with us. We'd only been married 2 weeks, and I brought this guy into my home. I didn't know him, and yet we brought him in. He had real long hair and a wiry beard, and just really introvert. And so he stayed with us for, Alice thinks it was more like 9 months. It seemed like 6 to 9 months he lived with us. And I just discipled him. He was a lot older than me. I was discipling him, and he was so introverted, I didn't know anything about his past. And then one day he comes out and he says, I've got a PhD degree and a master's degree and a doctorate degree and from the Baptist Theological Seminary in Dallas, Texas. And I'm like, I've been discipling someone that knows more than me. And then he got a job. He came in one day, his hair was cut, he had a shirt tie on, walked up to me and said, I'm leaving. I got a job at a Baptist college to teach there. And I thought, man, that was so neat. So we bore that fruit, and then we took some more on. We took another guy in that used to play the piano for a famous quartet, gospel quartet, that traveled the world, and he just got off track. We found him out door knocking. I brought him in my house, restored his family. And then after that, we brought in a couple that was on cocaine and crack, and we restored them, and he got called to the ministry. And so we just kept doing that, and that became really a culture for our life. And
almost like an identity for kind of the beginning of your ministry.
Exactly, it was. And but here's the thing, you don't know where God's taking that. See, you're trying to find the why you're here. It's not like you go, God, why am I here? And then God shows you everything. It's like God says, okay, now this opportunity is there. And those opportunities begin to form where I'm headed and what I'm going to do in the future. And so I have this huge heart of taking people that are on the street or messed up life into my home, mentoring them personally. And so that led us here to this ministry that we started in 1993, 31 years ago this month. We started this church. And as soon as we got here, I found a young girl that needed a place to go live. So we brought her in our home. And so that led to us really starting a home for troubled teenagers in 1996. We also had an adult home at that time, and men and women.
And you started the church in 93, so about 3 years later, you've already
Yeah, we were kind of crazy.
Yeah.
I wouldn't recommend this. I had two pastors call me and say, you need to settle down. You're going to tank your church. And it's by the grace of God. I didn't. We started the church in October of 93. And then September of 94, I started the bus ministry. In September of 95, I started the Christian school with no tuition. In September of 96, I opened a home for troubled kids. In September of 98, I opened a Bible Institute. In 2000, we opened it up to be a college. And so you can see I was probably going too fast. But anyway, it's still all operating pretty much. And but the why I'm here came to me, and just every day it was I was reaching out to these troubled kids. We had 650 teenagers from 47 states and 5 foreign countries come to the training center. And we didn't win in every case, but, I will say this, I'm so thankful for that. And so then we opened what's called Hebron, which is in the Bible, the city of refuge. And so we will take in now, we have apartments. We're building another one right now, apartments for pastors that have fallen and maybe they're in depression or maybe moral failure. So the why began with that guy in that car. I didn't see that. Like, okay, that guy is in really big need. I got to do something with that. Well, then that every time I turn around, I kept seeing this, that they're in need. And so I began to develop full-fledged facilities and ministries, and we've had pastors come from all over the country and even other countries just to come and live here. We don't charge them anything. We take care of them. We take care of the utilities, their living quarters, and some have stayed 8 months and some have stayed 3.5 years trying to get restored.
Yeah, and you would almost want to say that this is obviously from the Lord having you start this ministry and starting these ministries, but it's to me, I always see it as you're doing what Jesus came and did on this earth.
Yeah,
I do too. You're helping the ones who are in need. You're helping the ones who maybe no one wants to help.
Yeah,
and you're picking them up. You're housing them. You're being that good Samaritan to them, and I think it's
absolutely great. Yeah. Well, here's what I believe. I believe this with all my heart, and I think there's a little glitch sometimes in people's minds. There is not one sin on the face of the earth that Jesus did not die for. There's not one sinner, no matter what they've done, no matter how depraved and whatever we call is an abomination unto God, no matter what they've done, that I believe as long as they got oxygen in their lungs, they can be reached for Christ. We've just got to figure out, how are we going to help these people? When we started the counseling center, I don't know that I knew what I was doing,
I don't think so either.
I didn't take any counseling courses. I didn't go to college. And I'm not saying that it's a brag or it's a plus or a negative. It's just God did not lead me there. I think we have a college, but I didn't go. But we started this counseling thing because these kids in the home needed so much counseling, and that we began to develop our material, and now we're dealing with schizophrenia, bipolar, cutting, eating disorders, burning, insomnia, depression, suicide, all of those things. If you say, well, where'd that come from? I go all the way back to that guy sleeping in the car, back when I was not even in full-time Christian service, and I saw him, and I thought, that's why I'm here. And the next guy came, that's why I'm here. And the next one, until it just, God said, let's just do this big. Mm-hmm. So,
and it's not like you set out to go to other people and go, what kind of ministry should I start?
Right.
What should I be doing? It was more of God leading you to the people.
Yes.
There, and I think that's very important as we go out and starting churches or starting ministries and just going out and kind of seeing the why in our own lives, mm-hmm. so that way we can develop that in a spiritual sense.
Yeah, I preached for some guys, dear friends of mine. I mean, dear friends. Some guys that their church has like 19, 20 buses running down the road, It's phenomenal. And so that inspires me. We've got 4 or 5 bus routes here. I want more, but those guys inspire me. Mm-hmm. And those guys have me in their church, because they're like, I need to learn how to help people. You know, I mean, we're dealing with crazy things today.
And it's not where it's just people on the outside. Now I feel like it's people even on the inside of our church walls,
Yes.
in our church families, where we see, you know, the disorders, we see the depression, we see the
Yes.
anxiety that has, I think, gone rapidly in our churches, you know, and I think it's very important for us to not just counsel them, but also have a ministry in helping them or finding
Yes.
someone to help them.
Yeah, it takes enormous amount of time. You know, I mean, we did in the counseling ministry, we did 735 sit-down meetings last year in my office, and that's really hard to wrap my brain around. You know, that you're averaging 2 a day. You know, every day.
Yeah.
Besides, you know, preaching and teaching all that, but I tell you, I'm having so much fun. Someone says, "Are you worried about burnout?" No, I'm trying to figure out how to do more. I really am. I mean, good night. I'm at an age. My children are all gone. My grandkids have moved away. I'm wide open. You know, I want more, and because my why has gotten so big. Now it was real small. My why started with one guy. But now the why is like the world, you know?
So how would you describe you finding that why? Was it just you listening to the Spirit saying, hey, you know, you need to just be a witness for Christ every single day? Or was there an intentionality in your mind maybe of going, what is my why in life?
I don't know that it was intentional. I think it was just I was doing my thing, and God said, that guy needs help. Okay, now what does that mean, God? He's not going to make it. You're just going to hand him a track. So, okay. So I took him. And then Alice was so kind. She was a new convert. I mean, she got saved at 18, got married at 18, had a guy living in a car living in our house now, 2 weeks after we got married. She wasn't even born again for a year before we took that guy in.
Wow.
And she was just... we both had, God put that in our heart, and that's gone on and on and on, and just the why grows. It's the same why. Why are we here? And love people, salvage their life, and it's just a wonderful thing that God's allowed us to do. And everybody's got their own why, and again, I've got a lot of guys say, you know, I'd like to start a ministry like yours. Well, I just tell them, you know, make sure this is the why, because it's wonderful, but it's hard too. Yeah.
So with I know we've talked about the why. So in these why ministries, I know we have a Conqueror series, which is a series for men or a group of men that meet at your house almost every week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we started it, I think it's been 7 years ago. In April, be 8 years. Coming up April, be 8 years. And what we did was I just invited men to my house to meet with me that were struggling with keeping a moral pure mind. Now, not everyone were addicted to pornography, but everyone had been introduced to pornography, and some had an addiction to it. And so we discovered that 75% of men that are in the church pews of evangelical and Baptist churches are looking at pornography on a consistent basis, and 35% of women are. And so that was staggering to me to find out. And so we started this thing in my house, and now we're sometimes up to, we had 21 men here recently in my home, and we actually meet every other Tuesday. And it's a time of worship. It's a time of Bible study. It's a time of going through a video series on keeping a morally pure mind. It's a time of praying over one another. It's a time of assigning each other to call each other during the week and ask, how are you doing? We encourage every one of them to get some type of app on their phone where we can be accountable. And it's amazing. We get calls now. People around the state here want to come to my house. You know, one night the doorbell rang after everybody was in. I went there was a guy I don't even know. I go, what do you want? Because I heard there's a meeting here for men that have struggles. And he drove 63 miles. Some way he heard about that at my house. and drove 63 miles to my home to be a part of that. And we just had a call today, another one. So it's a part of my why.
Yeah.
You know?
And so with what I hear is you were obedient to God's word. You were obedient to the Holy Spirit. Whenever he said, hey, you need to go to get that guy that's in his car, he's living there, he's not going to. So that was obedience. And then you have consistency, 7 years of having men come over to your house every other week. That takes a toll, not just on you, but also it almost sets I wanted to say this, sometimes as you grow your ministry, there's some moments, there's some seasons where 3, 4, 5, only 5 people come, and you're expecting, like you said, 21. So as you navigate through that side of the ministry, how have you been able to, get through those times of low?
Well, I think that one of the dangers in our churches, okay, and I say Baptist churches is what I'm relating to because that's what I am, a Baptist, and I think because we became so number-oriented that it's like, I've tried to help churches start prayer meetings, and I tell them about our prayer meetings here that we have, and they'll go, well, I tried that, but I was the only one that came, or just one other guy. And I just said, well, why am I doing this? And it doesn't matter. You do it because God says do it. And you keep doing it. And I keep doing these things. And I've kept doing them 48 years now since I've got that guy in my home. It's been 48 years since he was in my home. And I'm still doing the same thing, but what's happening is we're sowing so much seed. Back then it was just a seed, and it created a little bit more and a little bit more, and we just keep sowing the seed, and it grows. You don't get into the thinking, if there's only one guy that'll meet me for prayer, then I'm not going to do this. I started out here. We started out just a couple of guys praying on Saturday night, and now I think it was Saturday night. I think there was 62 people here praying.
Amen. Yeah. It's always a good time on Saturdays when we come and pray, and so we have obedience, consistency, and even having the character of not thinking, hey, my ministry is growing. Kind of that pride can creep into your life, and so how have you been able to kind of allow yourself to glory? Not in yourself, but knowing that God has helped you through these ministries.
Sure.
And not allowing that pride to creep in and kind of say, wow, look what I've done.
Yeah. Well, I've discovered this. The older I get, and I don't think I'm over the hill, okay, but I am past retirement age, okay? I'm past that. But I don't see retirement. But the older I get, this is a weird thing, the less confident I am in me.
Wow.
And I always thought it'd be different. I thought, I would be more confident the older I get. And I was so insecure when I was younger. But it's going, I'm losing my confidence, which is wonderful. Really, it's so wonderful because the only thing I have is him. I was scared to death yesterday to speak at our Ignite conference. I told my wife, what am I doing standing up in front of these teenagers? There are missionaries there, and I'm just like so depending upon him now. It is so good. It's rich, but it's scary.
So whenever you start these ministries, I heard we were talking, and you told this other pastor, you said, get 2 guys from your church. They don't have to be the best, or they don't have to be leadership. You could always develop that, but have them start a ministry or with your ministry. And I believe that's, I feel when I heard that, I'm like, that's kind of how you kind of find someone to fill that ministry, but also allow it to grow.
Yes. Yeah. So, my son called me and asked me, he says, we were talking about leadership stuff, and he's got a church down in the Grand Cayman Island, and doing a great job. He's just tearing it up. Thankful to God for him, and believe that God is really, I'm watching God bring him to where he's not confident in himself, and he needs God more. I can tell that on the phone, and that's good. That's so good. But I was telling him, and I've told other people, is you find 2 guys, they may not even be just, they may not even know the Bible, and they're not, but they got something for God. You can learn the Bible, but do you have something for God? You know, and so find those guys, and then take those two guys and say, hey, we're going to start a ministry for teenagers right now, and I need you guys to help me do this. And you mentor them a little bit and let them throw some ideas on the table and use some of their ideas. And when you use their ideas, they begin to seem to possess the ministry. They're like, oh, wow, you used my idea. And you help that idea become a success. One of those guys is going to rise up as you mentor him in the Word and the things of God to say, I'm ready to take over the youth department. And same thing then in other areas of our ministry.
Okay, that's good. And so whenever we speak of all these other ministries that we have going on, because we have a nursing home ministry and we have a prison ministry and all these other ministries, how have you, do you just kind of wake up one day and like, hey, I want to start a ministry like that? Or is it kind of just you see a need and you just kind of obey the Spirit going forward?
You know, it's hard for me to answer that. I'm trying to think. You know, we moved here. Let's just take the bus ministry. This town is 26,000 people. There's not a bus ministry in the entire county and counties around us. So there's tens of thousands of children and teenagers that have no way to church. So I don't know, you know, of course, I've been in the bus ministry since 1977, okay? And so I've been helping run buses all these years. I see a need. God speaks to my heart. I may not even have the supply. But if God speaks to my heart, here's why I believe. If I step toward fulfilling the need, the resources and people will come to me. But what people are waiting on is for the resources and people to come to them before they step out toward the need. Okay. I don't know if that answers the question.
I think it answers great. And so as you have all these ministries, I know not all the ministries that we start stay. So when do you know it's time, you know, hey, you know what? This ministry has been going on for a few years. It hasn't really been not elevated, but just kind of grown. Mm-hmm. You know, how do you know when to kind of, okay, let's move on from that ministry, right? Maybe revisit later on in the year or upcoming years, and then kind of go around that.
Yeah, it's a hard one. It's a hard one because we are all taught never quit, don't quit. And I don't think stopping a particular ministry, like say, I know guys that had Christian schools, but most of the people went to homeschooling, and so they eliminate their Christian school. All the people went to homeschooling. But that's hard for me because I'm a driven person, and but I don't want to be the guy that makes it happen if God doesn't want to make it happen. So I think it's here, like we heard last night in the service, you got to learn the voice of God. If God says shut that down, you know, the Anchor Character Training Center, it was 21 years of troubled teens coming here. It shut down, 8 years ago or more, 9 years ago this November. And then God opened the Hebron ministry to take in troubled pastors and their families. So sometimes God just shuts it down. And so be open to that.
Okay. Yeah. That's good. I like these answers.
Good.
Hopefully it helps our audience. And so we're kind of closing things out. So we'll kind of give us a little bit, just kind of I know we need some obedience. That's what you did. You had some consistency. You had character when starting these ministries, and just listening to the voice of God. Kind of put that in a nutshell, and then we'll move on to our last
Well, I think
segment.
that what you said is exactly right. Now, I'm not going to say that I've done it all. Yeah, I probably did some self starts, things, and most of those things have faded away, you know. But the main stuff, the Lord has let us continue on. You know, I think the big one was starting the Christian school without tuition. And, you know, what's that been, 28 years of the Christian school now with no tuition. We have an entry fee, that's all. I'm not saying, but I don't think anybody ought to try to duplicate that unless God tells you to do it. But, that believing God told us to do it, we do it, we stay at it. God's voice has not told me not to do it. Every year someone comes up and says, we need to start charging tuition. I said, but what do I do with God's voice? It said, don't charge tuition.
Right, yeah. Absolutely right.
So.
Good. Well, before we get off air, I wanted to ask a few questions.
Okay.
I know it's Pastor Appreciation Month this October, so I appreciate you taking the time to answer these questions. Yeah. And there's 7 questions, and number 1 is, what is your favorite thing to do outside of teaching, preaching, and counseling?
Well, I do have a bass boat, and there is a 900-acre lake outside of town. It doesn't sound like I like doing it because I've only been on that lake 3 times this year, and it's almost time for me to put my boat away. Mm-hmm. I do like to do that, but I like to do them other things you just mentioned more than I like fishing, but I do like to fish. The other thing is at this point in my life, I just like to be time with Alice. I mean, that is so valuable to me and so necessary for my health. And so we have we have fun, we have spiritual intimacy, and God's been good to us. And so if I can grab, we don't have a whole lot of time, we just don't. But when we do have it, it's good. So that's what I like to do.
Okay, number 2, dead or alive, what are 3 people you would love to have lunch with?
You asked me that, and I really had a hard time because there were so many. I would like to have lunch with Leonard Ravenhill. I would probably be convicted to my very core of my being about a lack of revival in my life. I would like to have that. I had the privilege of hearing him preach. Hell Has No Exits. He preached from a wheelchair in Dallas, Texas, when I heard him. And I thought that would be a unique opportunity to sit and talk to him. And then there's a man by the name of Manley Beasley. He was a revivalist back in my early years, and he had some incurable diseases. He suffered all the time. He was in pain all the time. But the glory of God would rest upon his life. And I did get to have lunch with him. Okay. But I would like to do it again. Then the last one, I think, going way back, would be George Mueller. Oh, okay. Because George Mueller, it was my hero right off the bat when I started reading about his faith life. So those are guys, if I had all 3 of those at the table, that'd be an interesting conversation.
I feel like you would just listen the whole time.
I would. I'd be quiet.
Number 3, it says, name 1 or 2 books that changed your way of thinking when it comes to doing ministry.
Okay. Now, the things I'm talking about are not the practical things about doing ministry, like, how do you run a schedule, and how do you run a church, how do you run an order service, blah, 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 how you do a funeral. The things I'm going to talk about, these are the little deeper things, and there's a guy that was a Chinese guy by the name of Watchman Nee, and he wrote a book. He wrote several books, The Normal Christian Life, and he wrote Sit, Walk, Stand. I've read all those. I read them periodically. But the one book, and I'm reading it again right now, is called The Release of the Spirit. It's a very thin book, but my goodness, it's a deep book, and it's incredible. That book right there, again, changed my life. The other book that I would say is William Gurnall's book. He wrote it in 1655. Now, you think about 11 years after the King James Bible. And he wrote it on the complete Christian armor. And I read his daily devotion almost every day. I can't say every day, but almost every day. I read that, and I've read the entire volumes of that, and I've gleaned. That has helped me keep a warfare mentality.
Wow, good. Number 4, what is your favorite season?
Yeah, I was just telling you earlier, my favorite season is September and October. I was saved in September. I was called to preach in October, October. I started this church in October. I started my bus ministry in October. I started my Christian school in September, my Bible college in September. I've had some incredible, the fall season is rich. It's energizing. It's it's a wonderful time for me. I've had some most difficult season of my life has been September and October, but what's happened so good in September and October is like we just finished our missions conference. It's unbelievable, and so yeah, that's my season.
What is your favorite holiday?
Christmas. I love Christmas. Yeah, and it's not the gifts and all that. It's the celebration of the Savior. And I wanted to say Easter. To me, Christmas and Easter are the same thing, But yeah, Christmas is it.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
No doubt about it.
Folgers coffee. I'm doing a commercial here for Folgers coffee. Okay.
No Starbucks.
I'm not going to get into that. I just, someone comes to my office, I can have a cup of coffee. All I've got is Folgers, okay? So, I mean, it's the old commercial, the homegrown Folgers, okay?
It hits different. I understand that.
Yeah.
And, this last question is steak or fish?
Well, I love both, okay? But if I can get a good steak, I'm talking a good one, okay? And I could name places to get those, but I'm not going to do that here. But yeah, I love a good ribeye.
Okay.
Medium. Okay. All right.
Well, thank you everyone for listening to the Marvin Smith Podcast, Spirit-Led Conversations. We'll see you guys next time. Thank you.
Thank you.